This is GARIS Masculist MGTOW flyers, that is 2-3 page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 435, part 2, entitled Masculist Verbal Butchery Against Divorcing Fluffie Billionaires. Continuing straight on. In the extreme case, where the male partner is a genius billionaire, he should not be gender crimed by profoundly misandrous gender laws to pay half of his huge wealth to an untalented female partner simply because she fucked him and raised kids, a task that any woman can do. It is with good reason that Bill Burr calls such women gold-digging whores. They are. To Masculists, they are massive gender criminals, man-slaving fluffy parasites who will eventually be killed by extremely hateful masculist soldiers who will not tolerate that the fluffy feminists who have taken over the divorce courts have now become indirect genociders, wiping out whole populations by having made divorce so toxic for young men that these men reject marriage and paternity, thus crashing the birth rate. The root cause of this paternity rejection is the toxicity of divorce, and hence marriage and paternity, caused by the hated fluffy feminist lawyers and judges in the divorce courts that they control. So how can Masculists put a stop to these examples of divorcing fluffy billionaires? There are now probably over 1 billion MGTOWs and Masculists. 1 million MGTOWs and Masculists in the world. So pretty soon there will be enough of us to start our own political incidents. To make a historical analogy, when there were enough suffragettes, they began to ask themselves what they could do to attract attention in the media to their cause. One courageous suffragette threw herself in front of the King's horse in the UK and became the cause's first martyr, causing huge publicity. Similarly, with the second wave feminists who destroyed the Miss World pageant in 1970 by tossing flower bombs onto the stage and got on the front page of the major newspapers around the world, creating huge publicity for their feminist cause. Pretty soon, there will be enough Masculists and MGTOWs for men to move into phase 4 in the general development of social political movements, brackets, that is, phase 0 equals no awareness of a social political issue. Phase 1 equals intellectuals crying in the wilderness on the issue. Phase 2 equals interest groups, for example, the manosphere on the internet. Phase 3 equals mainstream, when the media spreads the ideas of the movement concerned to the masses. Phase 4 equals politics, when laws are changed to reflect the values of the movement. So what can Masculists do that would cause huge publicity for the men's lib movement, that would attract the interest of millions/billions of people worldwide? There are probably lots of ideas for answers to this question. Here's one suggestion. Find out the address of the divorcing fluffy billionaire and then organise a bunch of Masculists to picket her entrance holding placards with Masculist slogans such as gold-digging whore, manslaving gender criminal, parasitic vermin, and the like. When the media comes, have at least one highly articulate spokesman for the Masculists and MGTOWs, in brackets, although since the MGTOWs are known for their political wimpiness, in practice it would probably be a Masculist, since Masculists are known for being angry, hateful and very politically active, who can explain clearly and succinctly to the media why the Masculists are picketing the divorcing fluffy billionaire, putting enormous moral pressure on her as an anti-model to other women to not be like her or to pay a horrible price of not getting a man. Since nearly all men, especially the quality men with their higher intelligence, will have become Masculists who will not tolerate fluffy manslavery and aim to wipe it out by severely punishing fluffies, forcing them to grow up, to FIP up, not expecting, fluffy style, to parasite of the money and labour of a man. The divorcing fluffy billionaire is an extreme counterexample of the principle that Masculists strongly adhere to, that is, Masculists expect women to FIP up or die by being forced to rot on the shelf, seen as manslaving fluffy parasites, eventually to be killed, since Masculists see fluffiedom as manslavery. Manslavery as slavery, and slavery is hated. So Masculists have a hatred of fluffies and an even greater hatred of fluffy feminists, since it's bad enough that fluffy feminists are fluffies and hence hated manslavers, living off the money and labour of a man. But fluffy feminists are also hypocrites, since they want equal rights with men in the parliaments, but reject equal obligations with men by rejecting sharing equally with men the burden of earning a living, by bothering to get a career-competent education, so that women can be FIPs as adults and not expect to parasite off the money and labour of a man. When there are enough politically minded Masculists, such a political demo would be quite effective. What would be far more publicity generating would be for such a divorcing fluffy billionaire to be killed, murdered, as one of the first victims in the sex war that Masculist soldiers will in time wage as a means to stop the fluffy feminists from indirectly wiping out whole populations due to their control of the divorce courts, causing now 2/3 of young men to tell each other, quote, "I'm not accepting a 1 in 4 chance of having my kids ripped away from me by the hated fluffy feminist divorce court lawyers and judges, so fuck marriage and paternity. I will live the MGTOW lifestyle. I may fuck women, but I certainly won't marry them, and I certainly, in capital letters, won't give them my sperm." End quote. What the hated fluffy feminists are doing in the divorce courts is a war issue, deserving massive hatred coming from men against a major gender crime committed by hypocritical fluffy feminists who are monoconscious. That is, they only have their feminist consciousness raised, so are taught by feminism that only men are the gender oppressors, that gender oppression is a one-way street, so are not bi-conscious, that is, are unaware how women oppress men, and in fact far worse, since fluffies are manslaving gender criminals who manslave men for decades, which is a far greater gender crime than men raping or sexually harassing women, which is small beer in comparison. The strength of these Masculist arguments is very high, so it's only a question of time before there are millions of Masculists and MGTOWs who reject marriage and paternity, who are very angry at fluffies and fluffy feminists, and unlike the MGTOWs, are politically active, who demonstrate in large numbers to educate the ignorant public of the case for men's lib, to liberate men from decades of fluffy manslavery, pushing women to get off their fat parasitic asses and FIP up, or pay a horrible price of not getting a man. No Masculist is prepared to be a manslave to a hated fluffy parasite who is not bothered to FIP up. Such women are vermin to Masculists, who are severely punished by Masculists by being totally ignored, not even pumped and dumped, forced to rot on the shelf so that their fluffy bitch genes are removed from the gene pool, thus are exterminated slowly. Masculism is a major historical gender political shift, comparable in importance with feminism, that caused a social revolution with women that in only a few years caused millions of women to move out of the Hausfrau role to being female careerists. Similarly, Masculism will cause millions of men to reject the traditional manslave role, in which a man pays a horrible price by working for a fluffy parasite housewife, working for her for decades so she can sit on her fat parasitic ass raising her kids in a middle-class house that he pays for. To Masculists, those days are over. Young men in their millions are now no longer prepared to be manslaves to fluffy parasites and reject the traditional manslave role. The essence of Masculism is that it is a rebellion by men against being manslaves to fluffy parasites. Masculists aim to put a Masculist group in every high school, every campus, so that young men can put enormous moral pressure on their female classmates to FIP up or be socially and sexually rejected by men. Men have the financial power, so we're in a position to force women to FIP up or to rot on the shelf. A fluffy can only be a fluffy if she can get her financial claws into some gullible manslave, But the supply of such man-slavable fools is drying up as Masculist and MGTOW content creators on the internet reach the minds of millions of men, causing them to reject the traditional man-slave role of the man and instead to live the MGTOW lifestyle, rejecting marriage and paternity until the gender laws are menfaired, so that men are then, and only then, prepared to be fathers again. But that's not going to happen without major shake-ups in traditional gender roles, which in turn will necessitate major battles in gender politics as men lash out at the horrific gender crimes committed by women against men. For example, man-slaving men for decades. Or against women who fight bitterly against the para, that's paternity rejection right, in all its profound sexist hypocrisy, given that women have the mara, and thus constitutes the greatest form of sexual discrimination that exists. That is not against women, but against men. Or against women who'd not bother to FIP up, expecting to manslave a man for decades, etc. To achieve the Masculist goal of creating a FIP society, many politically violent demonstrations by the Masculists will be necessary. So one suggestion to get the Masculist political ball rolling is to picket the divorcing Fluffie Billionaires home as an extreme example of what the Masculists despise, that is, fluffy parasites who live off the money and labour of a man. This fluffy billionaire parasitism is an extreme example of man-slavery. Masculists, in time, will kill such manslavers, since to Masculists, manslavery is a war issue, and in a sex war, fluffies and fluffy feminists will get killed. That is the nature of war. Masculism, to restate the case, is a rebellion by men against being manslaves to women. Women will get off their fat parasitic asses and FIP up, or in the limit will be killed. It boils down to that. Fluffies, take note. The Masculist clock is ticking, and the level of Masculist hatred against fluffy parasite manslavery only increases. At some stage, the Masculist pressure cooker will explode. When that happens, God help fluffy parasites and fluffy feminist hypocrites. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Author of the book Masculism, Men's Rebellion Against Being Man-Slaves to Women, an e-textbook of 430 plus Masculist flyers for men's studies courses. Freely downloadable in Microsoft Word format from my website. Ciao.